Washington Journal continues.
And we are now joined by Cenk Uygur. He is the host of the Young Turks and founder and CEO of TYT Network. He'll be here to discuss his support for Bernie Sanders and Senator Sanders' future following a loss in 4 out of 5 states earlier this week, and what his candidacy means to the progressive movement. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you for joining us. Let's kick things off by talking about Donald Trump. Yesterday, yesterday there was a very high-profile clash before the GOP convention in California. What is your reaction to that?
Look, we have a clown for one of the nominees for president. And the Republican nominee for president has at least a 40% chance of winning, normally, okay? Now, I know I'm being harsh, but not nearly harsh enough. So the other day he said, we live in an evil world, the most evil world. Why? Are there other worlds that are also evil, but we happen to live in the most evil world? I mean, what a preposterous guy. He never makes any sense. And in terms of the clashes, well, any clash is by design. So he's got Roger Stone out there unofficially going around saying, if we go to the California convention and delegates don't vote with us, I'm going to give out their hotel room number. And then he says, I'm not encouraging people to do violence, but if they do, I guess I understand. So I'm paraphrasing there, but not by much. So this guy is both, he would be amusing if he was not important, but now dangerous.
I see. He's often cited, called these protesters Bernie supporters. Is that something that you think is the case?
So Bernie's got enough trouble right now in the Democratic side to be worried about sending people to Donald Trump rallies, etc. Besides which, can anyone trust anything that Donald Trump says? And how would he know? What did he investigate it? Did he talk to those guys? And if it is Bernie supporters, God bless him.
Okay, we are talking to Cenk Uygur about Senator Sanders' campaign. He's a supporter of the senator for president, as well as the progressive movement moving forward. You can join this conversation. Democrats can call in, as always, at 202-248-8000. Republicans, 202-248-8001. Independents, 202-248-8002. And if you're outside of the country, 202-748-8003. Now let's talk a little bit about Senator Sanders' campaign. He has downsized it. It's been widely reported. What does this mean in terms of this race and moving forward to the future beyond that?
Okay, so in terms of this race, it's a perfectly logical move. You know, look, it's always feels dispiriting when you hear the word downsizing. Oh, no, what's happening? But honestly, I don't know why he had staff in states that already voted. So bless his heart for having those staff. I've met with some of that staff. They're wonderful people. But should you marshal your forces towards states that haven't voted yet in the primary? Of course you should. So this is the most logical move you could ever do. Now, look, I'm not saying that he's likely to win at this point. I just wrote an op-ed saying that it's improbable, but definitely possible. And we can get into that if you want. But in terms of what it means for the future, that's even more important.
So, well, let's get into that a little bit. Looking at the delegate numbers, how can Senator Sanders still win?
Yeah, so let me explain. So there's about 1,200 delegates left to vote, okay, that they can get in the voting. Bernie Sanders is behind about 300 delegates. And by the way, if anybody counts the superdelegates has already voted, they're bad journalists. I'm going to go out there and say that. They're either purposely misleading their audience or they don't know politics, okay? Because superdelegates have not voted. They vote later, and they almost always switch, okay? Not all of them, but a lot of them. And in 2008, they switched from Hillary Clinton to Barack Obama when he won more pledged delegates. So superdelegates, for the moment being, don't count at all. Now, ironically, Bernie Sanders needs the superdelegates because he's not going to make up a 300-point lead in the states remaining with 1,200 left to go, right? That is very improbable. But is Hillary Clinton going to be able to win the election without superdelegates? No. So everybody's talking about a contested convention on the Republican side, which now it looks like Donald Trump might just flat out win the majority and not have any interest in contested convention. But on the Democratic side, you could easily have a contested convention where neither side has enough pledged delegates. Then we're having a conversation. Now, everybody in this town is absolutely convinced that she'll never be indicted and she's above the law, right? But if you had a dozen FBI agents investigating you, Kimberly, you know what would happen? You'd get indicted, okay? If I had a dozen agents investigating me, I'd get indicted. They're not investigating for their health. James Comey said over and over again, yeah, we're going to release our findings. I mean, now, maybe people in this town know something I don't know, which is entirely possible, that the powerful are above the law, right? And so she'll never be indicted because she's too powerful and she's too connected with the government. Maybe they're right about that. But maybe if you've got a dozen agents on your ass, you're going to get indicted. Okay. And can that happen in the next 6 weeks before the convention? Yes.
Okay. We have a lot of calls, as you could imagine, lighting up to chime in on this. First, on our Republican line, we have David calling in from Orange Park, Florida. David, you are on with Cenk Uygur.
Okay, thank you. I've been watching the, primaries and what have you, and it puzzles me that so many young people are following Bernie Sanders because, for the most part, they're going to want jobs. And he stands for high taxes, high regulation, open borders, this climate change nonsense, which is just more regulation and more hindrance on business. And, of course, the Democrats are the only industry they care about is the trial lawyer industry, which, again, hurts jobs. How does that help young people find jobs, those aspects of his...
All right, David, let's give him a chance to answer.
Okay, David, I'm glad you brought those two things up. So let's get into it. There's 2 points here. Number one, Bernie has a plan to do free education. What does that mean? My dad got a free education back in Turkey. He was an olive farmer. Right now, if he hadn't gotten that free college education, I'd be an olive farmer in southeastern Turkey. But instead, since he got that free education, yes, through higher taxes, he wound up becoming a mechanical engineer, starting his own company, and hiring 100 people. You know what that did? That helped the economy. Then he came over to the U.S., started his own business here, hired dozens of people here. You know what that did? It helped the economy. Free education liberates us all so that the rich don't have exclusive opportunities, Dave, so your kids could have the same equality of opportunity, not results, equality of opportunity. And not only is that the more moral thing to do, but it's actually the smarter thing to do for the economy. And in terms of raising taxes on the rich as opposed to the middle class and the poor, if you have more money for the poor and the middle class, you know what they do? They spend it. And it circulates in the economy quicker. If you give tax cuts to the rich, you know what you do? I know, David, you want to help the rich desperately, and you think they're going to one day, decades later, give you a job. They're never going to give you a job. You know what they do? They keep a great percentage of the money. If you're giving a tax cut to a millionaire, he usually keeps 95% of the savings in his pocket. He does not circulate it in the economy. And the more money that is circulated in the economy, the better it is, and the more jobs we have. Look, even the guy who Gordon Gekko was modeled after for Wall Street came out the other day on CNBC and said, of course Bernie has the better plan. You circulate the money, everybody gets more jobs. So that's the reality.
Okay, up next on our Democratic line, we have Brian calling in from Fayetteville, North Carolina. Brian, you are on with Cenk Uygur.
Oh, hi. How are you doing? I watch your video, Cenk. I really like the presentation you give. I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter. I'm dismayed because I've criticized Hillary, for taking the $650,000 from Goldman Sachs for speeches, and also she's taken millions, to support a super PAC from corporations. Now, I've got a lot of flack and pushback for this. The Hillary supporters say, wait a minute, you can't show quid pro quo. You can't show that she's done anything with this money. But I would like you to answer this. You don't have to show anything. Or if you're taking money from corporations or from Wall Street, shouldn't that be illegal? I mean, shouldn't that by itself be wrong? Could you please comment on the air? We don't have to show any connection.
All right, Brian, let's give him a chance to respond.
Okay. So, Brian, first of all, let me correct you. It wasn't $650,000 she took from Goldman Sachs. It was $675,000. So, now, regular Americans know that if somebody gives you $675,000, here's what you're going to be doing to them. Listening to them. Okay, so whether they give you millions of dollars in campaign contributions, and she has received untold millions of dollars from the banks in campaign contributions, or tens of millions of dollars, or they directly give it to your pocket, right? And so that's just 3 speeches for Goldman Sachs. That's $675,000. For the banks, overall, it's millions of dollars that Hillary Clinton has gotten, let alone what Bill Clinton's got. We used to have a word for this in America. It was called bribery. Now, that's very impolite to say. But in reality, they made bribery illegal. Yeah, if they give you millions of dollars, you're very likely to do what they ask you to do. Goldman Sachs, the guys who run it, I know a lot of people who work at Goldman Sachs. They ain't stupid. They're not giving away the millions of dollars for nothing. Okay, they're expecting something in return. And you might say, hey, maybe they make a mistake once. But to give the money to Hillary Clinton over and over and over again, you know what that means? That means they got a good return on investment. And yes, she has changed her votes. And now it's at the point where she agrees with the bank so much, she doesn't have to change her votes. Her votes are pro-bank anyway. Yes, she's changed on the bankruptcy bill, no question about it.
Okay. Well, fighting against big banks is a central part of the progressive platform. Well, we have a tweet that asks, how can the progressive movement keep the new voters Sanders has gotten involved in politics in the future? And that kind of plays a little bit into a piece by Salon by Jim Hightower, who writes in Salon, simply being there matters. While progressives have shown up for elections and winning numbers, our movement then tends to fade politely into the shadows, leaving public officials, even those we put in office, free to ignore us and capitulate to ever-present, ever-insisting corporate interests. No more. Grassroots progressives, as individuals and through our groups, must get in the face of power and stay there. Do you agree with that assessment? And if so, how do you do it?
Okay, more than you could imagine, Kimberly. Okay, so first of all, I don't know if it's good news or bad news for you. I suspect it's good news. The revolution has begun. Okay, and in the past, yes. And part of the reason Hillary Clinton has all the older voters in the Democratic Party is they're used to losing. So they're used to incrementalism, gradualism. We can't get anything done. The Republicans always win. So let's just bow our heads and ask us for a little piece of the pie, right? But we're done with that talk, okay? The money has drowned our democracy. And so we're going to get that money out of politics. And, you know, when we didn't have money in politics, and people think that time did not exist in America, but it did. And so for about 40 golden years, from Roosevelt to 1978, money was not awash in politics. There was always, around the edges, yes, there was always illegal bribery. But in 1976 and 78, we made bribery legal, okay, through Buckley v. Vallejo and corporations and Bilotti. Corporations now can give unlimited money to politicians. And if they give unlimited money, shockingly enough, the politicians work for them, of course. So we began civil disobedience in something called Democracy Spring. Right there at the Capitol, there's the most amount of people arrested ever in U.S. history at the Capitol. So now we're in the streets. We're going to be in the streets. We're going to be in the voting booths. We're going to be in their grill. And the establishment thinks, oh, Bernie Sanders, he's almost done. Oh, thank God. You know, they can't stand Bernie Sanders 1,000 times more than Donald Trump. Because Bernie Sanders would actually upend this system, and they are the system, right? But we're going to upend that system no matter what. And so we have Wolfpack. That's to get money out of politics. We're going to get the 20th Amendment. Our show now has 86 million unique viewers last month. Okay, there's a revolution afoot. And we didn't start it, Bernie didn't start it, but he has marshaled those forces. And whether he wins or loses, we're going to use those forces to get change in that capital.
Okay, we are talking to Young Turks host Cenk Uygur. And up next on our Republican line, we have Joe, who's calling in from Annapolis, Maryland. Good morning, Joe.
Yes, good morning, and thank you for taking my call. I do live in Annapolis. I'm a retired naval officer. I was enjoying a leisurely road trip down to Norfolk on Highway 301 when I heard your present, and I was listening to C-SPAN and enjoying your whole program when your present guest came on, and I just got enraged, and I just have to call you and tell you I just have two quick points. He called, I think, Donald Trump a clown and basically followed the left. But just please let me make my 2 points, if you would, please. And called him a clown and denigrated him. Well, Donald Trump is prophetic. He came on the stage a few months ago and criticized the Mexican illegal immigration and talked about the criminality. And we saw that criminality yesterday and the day before in the protests where people were out in California were protesting his appearance at the Republican convention, overturning barricades, stomping on cars, assaulting Donald Trump supporters. And so your guest should understand that Donald Trump was speaking the truth. That's my first point. My second point is your guest said that the revolution is beginning, and Bernie Sanders apparently is leading it. Well, I hope for this country's sake that there will be a revolution, but it's a revolution from that includes the people that Richard Nixon called the silent majority and that Reagan called the Reagan Democrats, working class, middle class people who are tired of paying for other people's stuff and want to keep more than 50% of their tax dollars. I'll just conclude by saying I have a modest pension from the Navy. I work as a lawyer. My wife works as a nurse. We enter the tax tables at 35% with various other taxes and property taxes. We're paying, and I'm not a rich man by any means. We're paying.
Well, Joe, we have a lot of calls. I want to give Cenk Uygur a chance to address the points you made.
Joe, you think I'm against you. You have no idea. I'm actually trying to help you. So let me explain. The Republicans trick you into thinking, oh my God, it's the Mexicans that are so powerful. Are you kidding me? The undocumented immigrants are the most powerless people in the country. You think somehow they crossed the border and caused the 2008 crash? 2008 crash cost 8 million jobs in this country. You know who did that? It wasn't undocumented workers. It was the bankers. Joe, what they've done is corporate America has given to the politicians, bribed the politicians, and they have shifted that tax burden onto you. Do you know that back in 1952, corporations used to pay about 35% of all the taxes? You know what they pay now? 10%. They took trillions of dollars in tax burden and they redistributed the wealth. So they got to keep the money, and they put the tax burden on you, Joe. That's why your taxes are high. You think your taxes are high because of a teachers union or because of undocumented workers or the powerless? No, your taxes are high and not their taxes because the powerful did that. Joe, I'm trying to do that revolution, and so is Sanders, not to hurt you, but to help you. So you got to get that new way of thinking in your head. And if you want to talk about violence, Donald, were you complaining, Joe, when Donald Trump was assaulting and his supporters were assaulting protesters in almost every rally he had, and the cops wouldn't arrest anyone as they saw one person after another assaulted? No, all of a sudden when somebody's protesting on the left, oh my God, violence, violence. Where were you when they were doing it? No, you weren't anywhere. And come on, you think Donald Trump was prophetic? The guy can barely speak English.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, let's get back to the race a little bit. We were talking about Senator Sanders' chances in the race. On the other side, Ted Cruz named a running mate in an effort to sort of jumpstart his campaign. I want to ask you a little bit about the prospect that Senator Sanders might take that same approach. And the Hill columnist Brent Badowski suggested that running mate might be Elizabeth Warren. What would you think about a Sanders-Warren ticket?
Brent's about 3-4 months behind me. So now, look, normally I'd love to make fun of Ted Cruz, and the guy's losing. He's very likely going to lose overall, and he names a VP at this point. And Ted Cruz might be the only guy in the country I dislike more than Donald Trump. But I'm not going to make fun of him. He grabbed the headlines. He needed to after all his losses in the Northeast. I understand why he did it for sake of politics. Now, does Carly Fiorina light anyone up? No. Okay, so she's a 3-time loser, lost to Barbara Boxer, lost to Donald Trump, lost at Hewlett-Packard, 42% of losses.
Well,
now,
what
in
about
terms
Sanders,
of
Warren?
in terms of Elizabeth Warren, he should have named her before the Iowa caucuses. Of course she'd be the VP. Of course she would. And she would have energized people. Maybe that puts him, he didn't need much in Iowa, 0.2% loss. That could have put him over the top. It could have put him over the top in Massachusetts, where he lost by about 1.3%. He should have named Elizabeth Warren from day one, whether she wanted it or not. And the reality is she would have taken it. And that's what he should have done a long time ago.
She's reportedly also being looked at by Secretary Clinton. If she does pick Elizabeth Warren as a running mate, do you think that will help her bring progressives on board to her campaign should she win the nomination?
Yes. So whether people are going to vote for Hillary Clinton or not, that's up to them, and that's a very tough and open question. Okay. But in terms of picking Elizabeth Warren, it would be a genius move, because if you're going to unify the party and you're looking for a progressive, obviously Elizabeth Warren is a great way to go. And just like Bill Clinton picked someone that was demographically similar to him, another male around the same age from the South, Al Gore, she could pick a woman and it'd be a powerful ticket. Donald Trump couldn't help but attack them over and over again in all the worst kind of ways, galvanizing all the women in the country to say, hell no, I'm not voting for Donald Trump. Elizabeth Warren is clearly the correct VP pick for Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders.
Okay, we are talking to Cenk Uygur. He is the host of Young Turks on the TYT network, also a former CNBC host. And up next on our independent line, we have Tony, who's calling in from Columbia, South Carolina. Tony, good morning.
Hi, C-SPAN. Hi, Cenk. Man, dude, you're all fired up this morning. Look, let me, a couple quick questions. These are quick. Like, give me just like one-word answers on these. So you're a pro-Bernie Sanders, I assume. Do you think Hillary Clinton is an honest person, yes or no?
I know there's no yes or no. The reason is I'm tempted to say no, but who's an honest person?
Well,
No, I'm being serious. No, first of all,
I don't want to vote for her. I don't want to vote for her. But
All right,
look at what are we being presented with? Look at the dichotomy we're being presented with.
Okay, Tony, let's give Cenk a chance to respond.
Yeah, Tony, just real quick. Look, almost none of the politicians are honest, right? They take money, they do what their donors tell them to do, including, unfortunately, at least 80% of Democrats. So, and by the way, none of us are honest. You're honest to your parents all the time when you were growing up? I don't think so. You're honest to your wife every time? I hope, but not necessarily every time, right? So, yeah, I get it. She's not the most honest person. And yes, you're right to be concerned about that. But you're right to be concerned about all politicians, except Bernie.
Okay, we just have a programming note. Sunday at 10 a.m. on Newsmakers, Arizona Congressman Raul Grijalva, I'm sure I said that right. Grijalva, thank you. Talks about the 2016 presidential campaign, Arizona voting, immigration, the Puerto Rico debt, and other issues. That's on Newsmakers on Sunday at 10 a.m., 6 p.m. Eastern. That's today, again, 10 a.m., 6 p.m. Eastern on C-SPAN. So stay tuned for that. And Cenk, I want to talk to you a little bit more about Bernie Sanders today and the Wall Street Journal. Peter Nicholas puts 4 questions to Bernie Sanders, and as a supporter and surrogate, I'm going to put some of them to you. One is...
Let me just say real quick, I'm not technically a surrogate.
All right, well...
Okay, but on air, it's obvious where my proclivities are.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you for that clarification. One, why did he take so long to take on the email issue on the debate? I'll give you 2 at a time. And then why did he wait so long to build ties with African-American voters?
Because he was wrong on both counts. So now on the email issue, there's 2 separate things. So the people who think that they're attacking Hillary Clinton based on things that other people have done, I get it. Yes, people have used private emails before in the government. No one built a private server in their house. And am I overly concerned about that? Not really. But is that a possible criminal violation? Unfortunately, it is, right? So whether you think that that's an important issue or not, the fact that you might get indicted is relevant. As much as it might drive Democrats crazy, it is relevant. If Bernie Sanders had a chance of being indicted, if Bernie Sanders had a dozen FBI investigators looking into him, every Democrat in this town would be screaming, get out of the race, get out of the race. How can you possibly, this guy might be a criminal, right? Because the establishment hates him because he's going to upturn their system, right? So it's relevant in that sense. And then, by the way, the real relevance of the emails is not any of that. If you care about policy, did the Clinton Foundation do favors for people who gave a lot of money to the Clinton Foundation? That's real, okay? And if they did, that's deplorable. So should he have concentrated on the Clinton Foundation earlier? Yes. In terms of African Americans, huge mistake. I mean, look, he has such a great record. He was chained to an African American woman protesting civil rights. And he's too humble to bring it up. Like George McGovern, who had the best military record that any presidential candidate has ever had, and he wouldn't bring it up because they're too humble, right? If that was Hillary Clinton who was chained to an African-American woman back in the civil rights era instead of working for Goldwater, you think she would have brought it up? She would have brought it up in every single ad, in every single debate, okay? He fought for civil rights for 40 years.
Okay, let's get back to our calls. We have a lot of them. Artie on our Democratic line calling from Mastic Beach, New York. You are on with Cenk Uygur.
Hey, how you guys doing this morning?
Good morning.
Good.
Hey, Cenk, good to talk to you. I've been following you for a long time. You know, I'm on TYT on a daily basis, along with your buddy Kyle from Secular.
Yes.
And you guys are doing a great job. Yeah, Cenk, about this progressive movement, okay? What I see is a lack of cohesion between different groups. If added up, could get this country on track in a very short time, all right? The Republicans have a way of coalescing. You know what I mean? There's zombie lies and sticking behind it. I'm not saying going to zombie lies or anything like that. But if you have progressive movement people or coalitions to come together, I'm talking about like, you know, Ronald Reagan Jr. with FFR, Southern Poverty Law Center.
Okay, Artie, do you have a question? We have a lot of callers. I just want to make sure you state your question clearly.
Is there anything in the making about this? You know, can we get more people, more normal people in one group instead of these different big other circles that are hard to get together with?
Okay.
So, Artie, I love your idea, and thanks for watching TYT. Thanks for watching Secular Talk. So the problem is there's two different kinds of so-called progressives. There are the people who believe in the Sanders revolution and are sick of the system as it is and understand that the rules have been rigged against us. And then there are the groups in Washington. And I don't want to say every group, but there are a lot of groups in Washington who pretend to be progressive, but they have the same donors as everybody else, and they don't want change. So they tap the brakes, they slow you down. Amendment. I mean, I'm theoretically in favor, but I'm not going to do anything about it. Get money out of politics. I'm theoretically in favor of it. Give me money, but I'm not going to do anything about it, right? So oftentimes what you don't see is behind the scenes. We have to fight those guys to try to get them on board and actually do something, right? So those are two different kinds of what I call so-called progressives. One is the real kind that actually wants change, and the other kind actually kind of likes the way Washington runs and doesn't want any change because they're very comfortable. So it's hard to unite those two because they won't come along with us.
Okay, up next on our Democratic line, we have Audrey calling in from Tampa, Florida. Audrey, good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead. What's your question for Cenk Uygur?
Hey, Cenk, I love you. You're one of my favorite blue dog Democrats.
Audrey, you're breaking up a little bit. Can you talk a little more clearly into the phone?
Yeah, Cenk, I'm saying that Cenk is one of my favorite blue dog Democrats. And I love you, Cenk. I follow you. And I just want to let you know that there's no way Bernie's going to get this nomination. He's not going to get it. You're saying that Bernie doesn't take contributions from people. They all take money for speeches. Come on. I'm sure Bernie has been paid at some point down the road.
No, he hasn't.
Come on, Cenk.
All right, Audrey, let's let him respond.
Audrey, see, I love you, and I appreciate your nice words about the show, but you're so used to the corruption that you think that, and I don't blame you, but we found, like Diogenes, we found the one honest man. Okay, now is he perfect? No, nobody's perfect, right? But I much rather have a man taking $27 at a time and be millions of voters than someone taking $225,000 at a time, beholden to certain corporate interests. So the reality is, no, Bernie Sanders has not given speeches like that. You know that Hillary Clinton made as much money as Bernie Sanders in one speech as Bernie Sanders and his wife made in 1 year. So no, he doesn't take the money. And so, look, my job is to tell you, be honest to you guys, whether it's about Republicans or Democrats. And I got kicked off of MSNBC basically for being too honest about Democrats and telling you how corrupt the party has become, right? But Bernie is not in that crowd. That's why we're supporting him. If he took the same kind of donations and got the same kind of speech money, then I'd be here telling you that he's the same as everybody else, but he isn't. Now, whether he's going to win or not at this point, that's a fair question, and even I say that it is improbable, right? But don't get discouraged. You got to vote no matter where you are, because the number of pledged delegates he picks up can be enormously relevant.
Okay. Talking about whether or not he wins, we can talk a little bit about his impact, a little more about his impact on the race. One is to have, as even he has said, to push Secretary Clinton further to the left. In today's Washington Post, it points out some points where Clinton has shifted closer to Sanders. It says in the course of fending off Sanders' challenge, Clinton appears to have conceded to the senator from Vermont on a couple of major economic policy issues, abandoning the centrist positions she previously held on trade and Social Security, and taking stances closer to Sanders' views. Have you found that, both on the issues of trade and Social Security, and do you think that that impact will be lasting on the party?
Yes, she has taken those new positions. And now they're talking about how she's going to pivot back to the center. See, in Washington, pivoting is seen as savvy. In the rest of the country, it's seen as lying. Okay, here used to be my position. Now I pivoted to the other side. Now I'm going to pivot again. So no, that means you don't really have a position, or you do, and you're keeping it from us. You want to know what her real position on trade is? She's going to do every trade deal. So what she says right now about TPP, about, oh, no, I'm against it. Oh, yeah, I see the light from Bernie Sanders. I'm against TPP. No, she isn't. I will bet any amount of money to if she's got a Hillary Clinton surrogate, an official surrogate that wants to bet me. Well, name the number, okay? If she has an opportunity as president to vote on TPP, she will back it. Put it down in stone. Because you know why? It's not a centrist position. It's a right-wing corporatist position. And Hillary Clinton is center-right. Not on social issues. She's finally gotten to be liberal on gay marriage, for example, in 2013. In 2012, she thought, I don't know about gay marriage. It's amazing. But I'll give it to her. I'll give her all the social issues. On the economic issues, she is clearly center-right. She's going to do every deal that the corporations want. So don't believe a word of it.
Okay, up next on our Republican line, we have Mike calling in from Houston, Texas. Mike, you're on with Cenk Uygur.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Uygur. Thank you. So I want to thank C-SPAN because they have a forum that used to exist on college campuses. There used to be a time when on college campuses, conservatives were allowed to speak. Freedom of speech is very controlled on college campuses by bullies. And bullies, if they get their feelings hurt, even with words, that's apparently intimidating. Words somehow are being controlled and regulated by the politically correct. So thank you for C-SPAN for allowing conservatives a place to speak because they can't on college campuses. Secondly, government is the bully. Government is the one that regulates winners and losers. They're the ones that have the money, they have the power, they have the tax base. And all these decisions that Mr. Uygur is talking about are solutions controlled and centralized in Washington, D.C. I have one question, though, specifically about the immigration.
Quickly, Mike, we have a lot of callers.
Okay, all right, quickly. Will in Menlo Park, fine, fancy area, high income near San Fran, will the Menlo Park parents of Stanford-bound fourth graders allow immigrants come in and sit next to their Stanford-bound fourth grader?
Okay, let's give him a chance to respond, Mike.
So, two things. I'll start with the last thing. The answer to that is, to what you're trying to get at is yes. In fact, a lot of the top private schools have scholarship programs to bring the most disadvantaged kids, including from very low socioeconomic backgrounds, into those schools to give them an opportunity. You think these guys are limousine liberals. No. So, of course, do limousine liberals exist? Yes, I'm sure some of them exist. But overall, no, they're trying to make sure that there is diversity in their schools. They do live by that credo. And so, no, you're worried about people in limousines. You know who's in limousines? The corporate executives who are misdirecting you and getting you to think that someone who's trying to get their kids a good education is somehow the bad guy. Now, on to the government. You say the real problem is the government which is corrupt and picks winners and losers. You're against crony capitalism? Mike, I couldn't agree with you more. I can't stand crony capitalism. I'll give you a sense of it, okay? Do you know that between 2010 and 2015, the top 200 corporations that gave money into politics gave $5.8 billion. You know what they got in return? $4.4 trillion from the government. So, Mike, next time you think about a corrupt government, I want you to think, who corrupted them? The people who corrupted them are the ones giving them donations. See, these government officials, they're just bureaucrats. They're order takers. They're waiters, okay? The question is, who's their boss? And the boss are the people giving the private financing of elections. We've got to end that. As long as you privately finance elections, you will have those private financiers running this country. You've got to have public financing so you and I can run the country. Mike, I love the debate. Conservatives, liberals, that's what we should go back to. I was a Republican on campus back when I was in college, and I hated when they shouted down people, and they shouted me down. I'm not going to let that happen. We need to get back to a democracy where we have real debates between liberals and conservatives, not a government that's bought.
Okay, on our Democratic line, up next we have Don, who's calling in from Gwynn Oak, Maryland. Don, you are on.
Good morning, and thank you. Hey, Cenk, I'd just like to compliment you and ask you a question. where are you getting your funding to run your great TYT network after being fired from MSNBC? It's just amazing that, somebody that went against corporate media is able to have a voice and build what I would consider a fairly, large organization.
All right, Don, let's give him a chance to respond.
Okay, great. So, Don, let me just correct one quick thing, and then I'll answer what's a very fair question. So, number one, when I was at MSNBC, I was not fired. They actually offered to double my salary. Now, they did basically demote me. So let me explain. I was at 6 o'clock, and on their 6 o'clock program, I got the highest ratings they ever got. And then they wanted to move me to the weekends and double my salary. If you think about that, that doesn't make much sense, right? So the reason is they wanted to be able to say, oh, no, we're still progressive. We have Cenk Uygur, who's a super progressive, just on the weekends, right? Where he won't cause too much trouble. They told me to toe the line and they said I was too much against the establishment. Well, they're right about that. And I actually don't begrudge them that. I get it. They have a corporate parent. They want mergers approved. There's a lot of things they don't want to rock the boat, right? So they made decisions that was wise for them. But don't worry about any of that, because back when I was on MSNBC 6 o'clock, I used to get 700,000 people that watched me a night. You know how many people watch us today? 7 million people a day. So our audience is now 10 times larger than it was on MSNBC. Like, this town hasn't caught on to it yet, but online is real, okay? It's as real as a heart attack for TV. So our audience is 86 million unique viewers last month. Okay, now where's our funding coming from? Those are two separate questions. One is, where are your investments coming from? They're largely coming from a hodgepodge set of people. I didn't do things the right way. I didn't get the VC money like I was supposed to. I didn't sell to a corporate parent like I was supposed to. Instead, I cobbled together these folks who believe in the idea, and who, by the way, of course, think they're going to make money, because we are a company. Okay, now, but I've got to align my interests with my audience. Otherwise, like all of the TV guys, you're going to betray your audience if your interests are not aligned with them. Okay, so how do we do that? Yes, we take advertiser money, but we also take subscription money. So our audience gives us $10 a month to get the whole show and to get special members only content. Yes, that's good for us, but it's also good for them, because if we do something that the audience doesn't like, then we lose money. That's how you align interests, so that you keep serving the audience. So that's at tytnetwork.com.
Okay. If Senator Clinton, well, she's also a senator, but if Secretary Clinton wins the nomination, could you support her?
So it depends on what you mean by support. So I'm not one of the regular talk show hosts. After one of the elections, Rush Limbaugh literally said, I'm tired of carrying the water for the Republican Party. Then why do you do it, Rush? Okay, he does it for the money. The Heritage Foundation and others give him boatloads of money behind the scenes, sometimes in front of the scenes, right? And so he carries their water. That is not what we do at the Young Turks. Now, if you're asking me, would I vote for Donald Trump or tell anybody to vote for Donald Trump, my answer is hell no, okay? So I'm going to be honest with the audience. I'm going to say, here's the upsides and downsides of Hillary Clinton. Here are the upsides and downsides of Donald Trump, if those are the two candidates, right? And I literally... No, that's not true. I can think of a couple of upsides of Donald Trump, but he's got a ton of downsides. So no, I won't be voting for Donald Trump. But if people think that means in the old school way, that means you go out and campaign for Hillary Clinton and change all your positions or pivot your opinion on Hillary Clinton, that ain't going to happen.
Okay. Up next on our independent line, we have Brian calling in from Kearns, Utah. Brian, you're on with Cenk Uygur.
All right, it's about time. Hey, one thing, Bernie Sanders has never had a job in the private sector. He's been in government his whole life. And socialism leads to communism.
No,
Communism leads to Marxism.
No, it doesn't.
Progressives, they'll just wait and take the time that way. And the Young Turks, you know where the Young Turks came from? They killed 1.5 million Christians.
All right, Brian. Let's give Cenk Uygur a chance to chime in.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. So let's take your point about that somebody put in your head through propaganda about how progressivism leads to Marxism. It's absurd. So socialism is what we have today in this country. Please don't have your head explode. So what socialism means is the government does some things and the private industry does some things, right? So private industry does Coca-Cola, Nike, makes your shoes. Government does other things like your police department, your fire department, your military. So you like the military? Oh, what a socialist you are. You know, the military is the largest government program there is. So yes, that's how socialism works. So the private industry doesn't do everything. The government doesn't do everything. Does it lead to communism? No. Western Europe is all socialist. We're in essence socialist, and it has never led to communism. Does communism lead to Marxism? No. Communism doesn't work at all. So unfortunately, and some of my super liberal audience will get mad at me, but this is the reality. Human nature, it does not work the way the communists want it to work, where you put in as much as you want and then take out only as much as you need. That is not how human beings work. So communism usually leads to dictatorships, because since it is not a good fit for human nature, some strong man comes in and takes over the process. So it is true that we've never really had communism, because Stalin and the others immediately took over and just made it a dictatorship. And now the so-called communism in China is actually capitalism on steroids. But understand what's going on. That's just, you're not remotely right in thinking that there's some sort of plan. Oh, the progressives would like to make this country Marxist. Why would we want that? We don't want that. We just want equality of opportunity. Shouldn't your kids have the same equality of opportunity as the richest kids in America? And the answer is, of course you should. We want free and fair elections. That's the most American thing you could ask for.
Okay, on our Republican line, we have Tommy calling in from New York City. Tommy, you are on. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? Okay, I'm just tired of all this progressive nonsense saying that. Do they know that the Democrats, all they do is tax and tax and tax the working man? That's all they do is tax the working man so they could fund their progressive programs. I got to work 2 jobs. I was never rich my whole life, so don't say like I'm a corporate puppet or something, because I'm not. I just worked my whole life, and I was never rich. And all I see is every year more and more taxes coming out.
Okay, Tommy, I want to give Cenk Uygur a chance to respond. We're running low on time.
Tommy, you might be surprised at how much I'm on your side. Why is Mitt Romney paying 13% taxes in the 1 year that he knew he was running for president? I guarantee you he was paying a lot less than that. Why is he hiding his money in the Cayman Islands, which we know for a fact that he did? Why do they all get to hide their money in Panama and Cayman Islands and all these different places? Because they're putting the tax burden on you, Tommy. They're not paying the taxes. And why? They rigged the rules. That's the crony capitalism you hate. So they get to have fancy tax loopholes that their accountants arrange. You don't have money for the kind of accountants that they have. You don't have the money to donate to politicians like they do. So they pay almost no taxes. So many giant corporations. I like Apple a lot. I got an iPhone, etc. But I don't like that they pay 0% taxes a lot of years. They're the most profitable company in the world. Why are they paying 0% taxes? When they pay 0%, you know what happens? You pay more. The reason you're being taxed so much more is because they shifted the tax burden on you. The rich and the corporations redistributed the wealth from you to them. They didn't redistribute it to the most powerless people in the country. They redistributed it to the most powerful people in the country. That's what I'm trying to help you see.
Okay, on our Democratic line, we have Kitty calling in from Boulder, Colorado. Kitty, you're on with Cenk Uygur.
Hey, Cenk. I watch you regularly, and I like all the personalities. I also watch C-SPAN regularly. And I just wanted to discuss how we are supposed to figure out what's going on.
Well, Kitty, we only have a few seconds left. Do you have a specific question for Cenk?
Okay, here's the thing. I was watching West Wing, and Alan Alda's character was talking about politics, and he said that if you can't drink their booze and take their money and vote against them, you don't belong in politics.
All right, let's let him respond to that in a few seconds we have left.
Yeah, Kitty, thanks for watching the Young Turks and C-SPAN. So that's the old school way of thinking, right? Oh, yeah, no, we're not influenced by the money. We can drink their booze and then we vote against them. Then you wouldn't get the money the second time. So that's a myth that they put out there. No, they get the money the second time, the third time, the fourth time because they did vote with them. So the reality is not every politician is corrupted, but about 99% of the Republican Party and about 80% of the Democratic Party has been corrupted, not because they're bad people, okay, but because of the system. The corruption is systemic It is based on corruption. You do private financing of elections, and those private financiers will rule this government. So that's what we're trying to fix.
Okay, Cenk Uygur, founder and CEO of TYT Network and host of the Young Turks. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.